So we've already done about the research paradigms, the types of research paradigms. Now let's talk about what are the research approaches that a researcher can take while doing his or her own research. So दो commonly used research approaches हैं, and they are quantitative in nature and qualitative in nature. So quantitative research is an inferential enterprise where researcher का मकसद होता है कि वो universal principles को जो है ना uncover कर सके. And philosophically and methodologically it means it is designed so that we can infer from a sample, and whatever results we get we can infer it to a larger population. We infer it from a sample जो कि हम draw करते हैं, और जो results आते हैं हम उसको extrapolate करते हैं to a larger population. So it's an inferential enterprise. Sample लेके from a population, we say that whatever result that we get from the sample, they're applicable or generalizable to the population जहाँ से हमने sample अपना draw किया. On the other hand, the qualitative research is an interpretive enterprise, और जो कि context dependent है, it is highly subjective in nature, or it's built around the philosophical assumptions. It is designed around our ability to interpret a phenomena from a researcher who can be inside the phenomena or who can observe by being outside of the phenomena. एक दोनों perspective से जो है ना interpret results करते हैं. Either you can not be the part of the study in sense के आप उसके phenomena, whatever the entities are surrounding the phenomena, आप उसके अंदर रहकर phenomena understand करें, or you अपने आप को अलग करके from the phenomena that you're studying, आप अलग होके from an outsider perspective उसको understand करें. So these qualitative is designed around interpretation of both, या insider interpretation या outsider interpretation. Although in qualitative approach to research, true objectivity तो नहीं होती that we find in the quantitative approach, because at the end of the day the objectivity, the quantitative nature itself allows the objectivity to be there. लेकिन यहाँ पर since it is about the interpretation, तो true sense में objectivity नहीं है. लेकिन we can say that objectivity in terms of proxy कि जो हमारी collective या shared understanding है of the phenomena that we are understanding qualitatively, उसकी जो shared understanding है that serves as a proxy for the objectivity. True objectivity नहीं है, but the shared understanding does gives of some sense of objectivity. The overall purpose of both the approaches to research we can look at, and from the quantitative perspective, जो purpose होता है quantitative approach का, that is to test a theory. यानी कि पहले से ही कोई theory या understanding build हुई है, and we want to test whether it applies to a particular to a particular situation or not. And the function is to explain, predict, or control phenomena through focused collection of numerical data. तो हम explain करने की कोशिश करते हैं, predict करने की कोशिश करते हैं कैसे control कर सकें phenomena को, and we collect numerical data in order to explain that phenomena or to test a theory. On the other hand, qualitative is about creating foundations for the theory. We don't have the theory in sense, and we only have bits of information here and there, and we're trying to make sense of those bits of information. So much so that we acquaint ourselves with the phenomena so that we're in a position कि हम लोग कोई theory propose कर सकें. So the function is to explain or to gain insight and the understanding of the phenomena, and we do that by collection of narrative data. In quantitative we have a numerical data, and in qualitative approach we have a narrative data. अब data किस किस्म का होता है in quantitative and qualitative approaches? In qualitative, the data is in the form of words, pictures, or objects, in sentences. That is qualitative in nature. But in quantitative, is in the form of numbers, जो कि statistics in the end हमें देते हैं. The data is qualitative and it is subjective. That is, individuals' interpretation of the event is important. So this brings us to the subjectivity in the data जो कि हमने in qualitative approach इकट्ठा किया. It uses participation, observation, or in-depth interviews. So when you do in-depth interviews, so automatically subjectivity introduce हो जाती है. Or when you participant observation करते हैं तो there is subjectivity in that. On the other hand, in quantitative, the data is objective in nature. Because why? We seek the precise measurement. Whatever we are measuring, we're seeking कि वो precisely measure हो, so that we can assign a quantity to it. Even in the beginning वो quantitatively measure नहीं हो रहा as a first step. And the analysis of the target concept वो हम लोग objectively करते हैं through statistics. और एक example क्या है of measurements that are objective in nature in quantitative approach, that is surveys. Surveys किसी भी चीज़ के हों, किसी भी phenomena को gauge कर रहे हों या understand करने की कोशिश कर रहे हों, तो ultimately at the end of the day it is the precise measurement that we get out of it. Doesn't matter कि सवाल हमने कैसे पूछे हैं, सवाल हमने बेशक ऐसे पूछे हों कि आप इस चीज़ को पसंद करते हो या नहीं करते, yes या no में, तो but we can always quantify that कि yes का मतलब हो गया 1 और no का मतलब हो गया 0. So at the end of the day this quantification allows us for our data to be objective. So qualitative data is rich but it's time consuming. और क्योंकि subjectivity है तो we cannot generalize it to larger population, and it is context driven. The data is a context driven, तो वो हम लोग सिर्फ इस context के around रहते हुए ही अपनी findings दे सकते हैं in qualitative approaches. But on the other hand, in quantitative approaches, we're able to generalize to a larger context. सिर्फ इस context में नहीं है, we are able to generalize it so that we can say that कि अगर ये इधर हो सकता है, in this population we can safely say that it is generalizable in a larger context. So data is although more efficient because of its generalizability, and we're able to test hypotheses, लेकिन उसमें क्या है, the contextual details are not there. It's not rich. It does not have those details that we find in a qualitative data. And hypotheses in a qualitative approach, they are not formed in the beginning, right? They are tentative or they are evolving as we're carrying out our study via qualitative approach. On the other hand, the hypotheses in our quantitative approach, they are stated prior to the study. क्यों? क्योंकि we're testing a theory. तो test theory करने के लिए we should be able to, or you should be able to make statements that can be tested, a predictable statement that you can test. So that is why the hypotheses are they are stated before you carry out the study, before you conduct a quantitative study. And they are not tentative, they are specific, and they are predictable. That is, they can be testable. Now, the research settings that you find in qualitative approach to research are naturalistic settings. Since they are context dependent, तो आप natural उस context में जाकर in that naturalistic settings, you'll be carrying out your study. On the other hand, in quantitative approach, you'll try to control your research settings. That means आप जाकर actual environment में नहीं काम करोगे, बल्कि you'll test that. You test that theory in controlled laboratory settings. आप control भी करोगे, manipulate भी करोगे in quantitative setting. But on the other hand, qualitative में you'll be doing studies, or you'll be testing variables or investigate variables जो कि in settings जो कि naturally occur करती हैं. approach to inquiry when it comes to qualitative approach to research, वो क्या है? That is, since you small with observation, so you go from specifics to general, right? That should be your approach to inquiry. So that is subjective, holistic, and inductive in nature, right? And ज़्यादा जो focus होता है, that is कि process आपने सही follow किया. It is process oriented. But on the other hand, quantitative is moving from general and going to the specific. That means आपके पास एक बड़ा theory है that you think it is true about the phenomena that you're understanding, और आप उस theory को test करके आप specifically जो है ना quantification लेके आते हैं. So from generic to specific, and it is very objective, the quantitative approach as opposed to qualitative, and it is outcome oriented. That quantification is what you want, and that is deductive in nature. So हमने बात की कि qualitative is inductive and quantitative is deductive. So let's see what these two terms means. So this is what an inductive research is, which is qualitative in nature. That means you do not have a theory in the beginning. You just have bits of information जो कि आप observations होती हैं. So you begin, of course, with those observations, and having those observations, you form a pattern. आपको pattern कोई नजर आ जाता है, and based on that pattern, you know tentative आपके hypotheses build होते हैं, and based on those on tentative hypotheses को we also call them propositions, and those propositions or those tentative hypotheses ultimately leads to a theory development. On the other hand, जो deductive approach है, that starts with the generic. That is, you have a theory, और उस theory की base के ऊपर you form statement जो कि आप test कर सकते हो, which we call hypothesis. And hypothesis की base के ऊपर you collect that data based on that hypothesis. यहाँ पे किसी भी किस्म का data आप ले सकते हो, but over here the data that you're collecting is very specific. That is, related to the hypothesis. And then those data get through, you'll confirm the theory that you're testing, where it goes. You have a quantification in the testing of that theory. Okay, now जो sampling in qualitative approach to research, that is done in a purposive manner, and you try to get a small sample. Why? Because the qualitative is really time consuming. So small sample जो है ना sampling में the researcher he does not have the resources, so the sample is small. लेकिन the small sample doesn't really mean it is not representative. Sample is small, but it has to be representative of the phenomena that you're or the context in which you're doing your qualitative research. And you sample, so you acquire an in-depth understanding of the phenomena in that context. Again, in quantitative approach to research, your sampling is random, and intent is that you get large samples, because of course आपने general to specific जाना है. So that means you have to have those larger samples जो कि represent कर रहे हो, so that you're able to generalize the results to the population at hand. ठीक है, तो अगर आपके sample ही बहुत छोटा होगा, तो the results जो आपके आएंगे, or maybe the analysis that you have to do, it will not allow you to generalize the results of your study to the population जिनको आप study कर रहे हो, या जो population of your study जो आपने ली है. Now the measurements in the qualitative approach to research वो standard की नहीं होती, because it's subjective. There's a subjectivity element in it. The subjectivity element में you cannot have a standard in terms of measurement. क्योंकि normally it is narrative in nature. और जो measurement होती है, that is ongoing. But on the other hand, in qualitative approach to research, your measurements are standardized. You go for standardized measurements. If you One of the important points in quantitative research is आपने measure किया तो कैसे किया, and did you take measurements using standard way of measuring it or not. Even when it comes to questionnaires quantitative in nature होते हैं, लेकिन वहाँ पर भी ये प्रॉब्लम आता है if you take questionnaires जो कि standard नहीं है, ये standardized नहीं है, standardized in terms के they're not valid and psychometrically sound, that means के your quantitative study is in trouble, or that means के the sort of analysis that you can perform in such scenario is going to be limited. So standardized measurements होती हैं numerical, और हमेशा आखिर में ली जाती हैं. जो measurements हैं वो जो numerical measurements हैं वो they might start off with something like like I told you already, in terms of narration, in terms of words, not narration but words, lekin at the end of the day they are numerical. But over here measurement overall throughout narrative hoti hain, they are not numerical and they are ongoing. Yahan par even, for example, if you have a questionnaire and it's about maybe let's suppose your experience about something, तो in the beginning maybe वो सवाल जो है वो numerical ना हो, यानी what is your experience about a particular thing, और उसका जवाब maybe non numerical हो कि बहुत मेरा बिल्कुल अच्छा नहीं था, अच्छा था, या दरमियाना था, लेकिन at the end of the day we assign a numerical value to that measurement. यानी कि अगर आपने कहा कि आपका एक्सपीरियंस अच्छा नहीं था कि क्या पीछे क्वांटिफिकेशन होगी, मे बी इट वुड बी वन मीन्स कि अच्छा नहीं था और बहुत अच्छा था, द क्वांटिफिकेशन असाइन टू इट वुड बी 5 कि बहुत अच्छा, 5 मीन्स बहुत अच्छा एंड 1 मीन्स बिल्कुल भी अच्छा नहीं, राइट. सो एट द एंड there is a numerical measurement in quantitative approach to research. Design and method, तो in qualitative जो design आपकी study का होता है वो flexible होता है. It is not structured, और start में ये नहीं कहा जाता कि यही design रहेगा, and it is not specific and it is only specified only in general terms in advance of the study. यानी कि generically explain कर दिया जाता है लेकिन it is not specific. But on the other hand, in quantitative studies, since we have a theory that we're testing, तो आपका design is structured and it is inflexible. यानी कि once you design it, you cannot change it as the study moves along. And it is specified in detail in advance of the study. तो आप proper detail देते हो अपने design of your study that is you're carrying out through quantitative approach. But in qualitative approach में you do not specify it in detail, you only specify it generally, and it is flexible as well. Alright, the design in qualitative approach to research, it involves कि कोई intervention ना हो या disturbance ना हो. Why? Because you're trying to understand a phenomena in its natural settings, या in a specific context. तो आपने उस context को खराब नहीं करना है to intervene. यानी कि you cannot control it. You're trying to understand things as they are in that context. But on the other hand, over here in quantitative design of your study, you need interventions. यानी कि आप कुछ चीज़ों को in order to see how things work, या आप थ्योरी को टेस्ट करने के लिए आप कुछ चीज़ों को कंट्रोल करते हो, कुछ चीज़ों को मैनिपुलेट करते हो, कुछ चीज़ों को आप चेंज करते हो. So it involves intervention. कि एक researcher की intervention in quantitative study definitely in terms of कि he वो चेंज करता है कुछ वेरिएबल्स को और कुछ वेरिएबल्स को कंट्रोल रखता है. But in qualitative approaches to research, minimal disturbance, because you're trying to understand phenomena as it is and trying to come at a point where you're able to formulate a theory. But over here, you already have a theory and you're trying to test it by manipulation and controlling of different variables. अच्छा, तो examples क्या हैं methods की जो qualitative in nature हैं? You can have ethnographic studies, they're qualitative in nature. Case studies are qualitative in nature. Grounded theory approach of doing analysis is qualitative in nature. और इसी तरह historical जो analysis करते हैं, they are qualitative in nature. On the other hand, जो methods हैं, they're experiments that fall under quantitative research approach. Questionnaire हैं और उसके अंदर जो आप analysis कर सकते हैं, they can be descriptive, correlational या comparative analysis कर सकते हैं या causal analysis कर सकते हैं using statistical techniques available. अच्छा, data collection strategies when it comes to qualitative way of doing research, तो उसमें कैसे आप डेटा कलेक्ट करते हैं? आप डॉक्यूमेंट कलेक्ट करते हैं, डॉक्यूमेंट पढ़ते हैं, डॉक्यूमेंट से डेटा निकालते हैं. और यू कैन डू पार्टिसिपेशन ऑब्जर्वेशन. But in quantitative approach to your research, you have non-participant observation. यानी कि आप you do not become participant in observing. ये वो आपको खुद देते हैं data. And the data can be through semi-structured or formal interviews, or it could be administration of tests and questionnaires. तो आपका डेटा आपने कैसे कलेक्ट किया? ये क्वेश्चनर के थ्रू कर दें या कोई टेस्ट कर लिया. In terms of medical, how do you collect data? You test via different instruments available in medical fields. On the other hand, in qualitative, you rely on unstructured and informal interview, because you're trying to find out you're trying to understand the phenomena in its context. So it is an informal interview. अगर structured होगा, तो that means you already are introducing bias into understanding what that phenomena is. Because see this, the qualitative approach to research say that you only have observations, you only have data points. आपको नहीं पता where will they lead. That is why you should do unstructured and informal interviews, so that you can know all of that whatever there is. But here it says that in quantitative realm, in quantitative approach to research, you already have a theory. तो आपको कुछ चीजों को तो पता है. That means you know what variables you have. That is why आप formal interviews करोगे, having जो एक structured approach where you will be interviewing them with some predetermined questions जो आपने पहले से तैयार किए होंगे about the phenomena. And here you take extensive detailed field notes आप लेते हो instead of administration of tests या questionnaire. यहाँ पर आप you take field notes या फिर लिख लेते हो या फिर उनकी जो है ना recordings करते हो, so that you don't miss out on any of the detail जो कि आपको आपके participants ने बताई है. So data analysis in qualitative way of doing research is वो ongoing होता है, because see this, you have observation, कुछ और observation आई आपने उसके पर analysis किया, फिर और observation आई आपने उसके पर analysis किया. So you keep on doing your analysis as you're observing and getting the data. So data is on analysis जो है ना वो ongoing होता है, and it involves synthesis, right? Or because the data itself is raw data or words हैं या narrations हैं. But on the other hand, quantitative approach to research में जो raw data है वो numbers हैं, और जो आपका data analysis होता है वो ongoing नहीं होता. Once you have to collect all the data and once you have done with the collection of the data, then you perform your analysis at the end of getting all of your data, and you do a statistical analysis, which is not the case in qualitative. Qualitative में आप data collect करते हो, analysis perform करते हो, फिर और data collect करते हो, फिर analysis perform करते हो. That is you have to synthesize that data, and synthesis is the process or result of building up separate elements, especially ideas, into a connected whole, especially into a theory or a system. So see this, it's a way of putting things together so that they form elements, and there are multiple elements to it, and those elements, when they combine together, they give you a whole picture of the phenomena that you're trying to understand. So ongoing, and it involves synthesis. But over here at the end, the data analysis at the end, and that is a statistical analysis. The data interpretation in qualitative way of researching is conclusions are tentative. जो interpret आप data कहते हैं at the end of the day, वो tentative होती हैं, और the conclusions that you're arriving at, they are reviewed on an ongoing basis. Why? Because आपका data analysis साथ साथ चल रहा होता है. Or the generalization that you draw from your findings, या जो from the results, they are speculative or non-existent. तो आप generalize नहीं कर सकते, या limited generalization होती है या होती ही नहीं है. Why? Because the phenomena that you're trying to understand, वो context के ऊपर driven है. तो उस context में तो शायद true हो, लेकिन किसी और context में आप नहीं कह सकते. But in quantitative realm, the conclusion and generalizations formulated at the end of the study, तो वो ongoing basis के ऊपर नहीं होती, क्योंकि data analysis आपने एक ही दफा किया है, that is at the end, and they are stated with predetermined degree of certainty. तो आप जो interpretation of data कह रहे होते हैं, आप you have that certainty कि I'm certain about this phenomena being generalizable to the population जो मैंने study किया, because you have quantification or objectivity होती है instead of subjectivity, which we find in our qualitative types of studies. तो trends क्या हैं research में at this moment of time? In the beginning, it was mostly quantitative approach जो कि researchers ज़्यादातर पसंद करते थे. But recently now, there's an increased applicability of qualitative approach to studying. क्योंकि, and that makes sense now, because the research is more of an interdisciplinary in nature. That is, जो interdisciplinary research जो interdisciplinary in nature है, उस research को ज़्यादा पसंद किया जा रहा है. Researchers are going beyond their discipline, जो कि major है, and they're finding ideas from other disciplines and merging them and carrying out their research in the cusp of multiple disciplines. And that is why there is a need to understand a phenomena in both quantitative context and qualitative context. And not only that, वो understand कर सके in under positivistic approach or positivistic paradigm, बल्कि interpretivistic paradigm में भी researchers जो हैं, they are interested to get the benefits of the both. कि quantitative terms में भी आपको पता चल सके, objectivity भी आ जाए, लेकिन at the same time जो contextual details हैं जो कि quantitative objectivity में नहीं है, वो भी through qualitative studies आ जाए. तो अब अगर as a researcher student you go out, तो mixed method studies बहुत ज़्यादा there's a increasing trend of carrying those out, because they have quantification in them, which we want कि बहुत accuracy उसके अंदर हो, precision हो, because we get the quantification, लेकिन उसके साथ साथ वो contextual details भी मौजूद हों जो कि quantitative studies में नहीं होती. So qualitative, a mix of qualitative and quantitative study जो है, now there's an increasing trend to to understand a phenomena from both approaches, from a qualitative perspective and from the quantitative